All right, Mike, we got a great show here ahead of us, don't we?
Every time we're gonna start off with, we got a great show coming.
Absolutely. So you got me thinking last week on your topic, and your topic was what? What one question?
What's your problem?
What's your problem? And initially, I took offense to that because I emphasized it more in a New York way. What's your problem? What's your problem? So you mean it in a deeper, sensitive way. Hey, truly, what is your deeper problem? Correct?
Yeah, and I think it was interesting, and I think your SOS will play right into it. So we talked about 3 scenarios. One is, I think I have a burning problem, very specific problem, right? And we can come in and help and figure out, is that really the problem you want to try and solve and work through that? The next one is, everything's on fire, right? I can't get a handle on what's going on. How can you guys help me? And I think you kind of chimed in and said, I've got a framework for that. And then the third one was, which we'll talk about next week, is more of a transformation, right? Things are going well. How can I leverage that and take the business forward?
Right. So what we want to do is build on this question. Okay, we've established what our problem is, truly what our root problem is. Now what do we do? And I have 3 simple questions. It follows an SOS format. So once you have a problem, what do? You fire off the SOS, and 3 simple questions that handle both 3 things. Number 1, strategy. Number 2, optimization, and number 3, sustainability. So, but real quickly, I found some interesting facts. 88% of small businesses have no strategic plan whatsoever. Now, conversely, 88% of all large businesses have a strategic plan. So that number is completely flipped. Absolutely incredible. Going a little bit further, 71% of the fastest growing companies in America have strategic plans. So that tells you something right there.
It's funny. I think every episode so far, we keep bringing strategy up.
Right.
Right. So it's, you're gonna find, our listeners are gonna find that this is not going away. We're coming back to this.
And strategy has gotten such a bad rap, honestly, especially in the small business community, because everybody talks strategy, but it as some ethereal thing way up in the clouds, that it's something to attain to, but nobody really puts it in concrete detail. What it is, how we execute it, how we go forward. And that's what you do a great job of. And that's what we're kind of peeling back your onion that you talked about, so to speak.
Absolutely. So,
yes. Here's another one. On the downside, 90% of companies fail to execute a strategic plan effectively. And those are the ones that even have a strategic plan. So of the 12% that have a strategic plan of the small businesses, 90% of them don't execute it effectively. And that's my belief as to why strategic planning has gotten such a bad rap, because it's all focused on this boardroom mentality and not in the boots on the ground where the rubber meets the road. How do we effectively put this strategy into place?
Right. Brian, let me ask you a question. Do you want to go through each of the 3 elements in sequence quickly, then come back, or should we just jump into each one of these and kind of talk through them a little bit more?
Yeah, let's jump into each one of these. Gotcha. Go right ahead.
One of the things that we talked about, I think episode 2, was around just having a written plan, right? What's your true north? What's your feeling on that? If they have a plan already written down and they seem to be executing, but they still are having problems, are you comfortable engaging with them and trying to help solve that problem, and then while also looking at that 1-page business plan or whatever they have?
Yeah, that's a great starting point. And while I was saying that strategic planning's got a bad rap, the only thing that's gotten a worse rap in small businesses has been establishing a culture in a mission statement. Well, we know that that is imperative. But the reason it's gotten such a bad rap and a bad taste in small business owners' mouths is because that's all they end up with is that piece of paper. They don't know how to execute it, communicate it, stand by it, have meetings around it. And that's why I love what you said is treating it more as like a true north. All right, let's get the compass out. Are we aligned? Are we going that way? Where's the North Star? So yeah, absolutely. If they have something to start off with, yeah, let's go with that.
And Brian, let's keep going back to, we talked about the proving ground or experimenting. So one of the things here is we're not looking for perfection.
Right.
You need something on paper to talk about, again, what's your true north? What's the aim of the business? Mission, vision, values, those kinds of things. But you can come back to them, right? As you work and start to understand your business better, you can always come back. So don't think that this is like the tablets that are chiseled in stone and they're going to sit there and they need to withstand decades and all the fires that we have and all the storms that we have. It really is, let's have something to start with. And if they do have something, let's take a look at that. But what you're saying is in your framework, we're good with that. We can then start helping solve some problems internally. And we're always coming back and saying, is this strategy, is this business plan supporting what you're trying to do as you learn?
So you're stealing my thunder, Mike.
No.
Great minds either think alike or misery loves company, because that is one of the key takeaways I actually had at the end that we want to go back to is keeping in mind treat this as an experiment. Do not think of this as a one and done perfection. It's not that way. It's not going to be that way. You have to put it into motion and see where the sticking points are, where the friction is, how you reduce the issues that happen from this area. So first question, going on with let's focus on the strategy part. So
yes,
for once we got our problem established, we want to say, okay, what is going to be our strategy for it? Simple question to start off with. What is my end goal and where am I today? Very simple. Let's just set this up as a simple roadmap. Doesn't have to be weaving around, and we don't have to catch and identify every road bump, every speed trap, every traffic light. All we want to do is, where are we now? Where do we want to be? So that's the key. That's the first question. And then
I was just going to say, Brian, and that creates the gap, right? So if you don't understand those 2 points, right? It's like looking at a map. If you don't understand those 2 points, then where are you going, right? And that future state of where you want to get to, that's all part of your plan. So if you don't have that written down, you're going to help them get something on paper, right? To say, that's where we want to get to.
Right.
Perfect.
And then so after you ask that question and you decide, all right, I am here at this point, whether it's a numbers you're establishing as your beginning issue or your amount of locations, and then you have your end point. Again, can be a revenue number, can be a EBITDA number, it doesn't matter. End point. Then you want to ask, what are my options for attacking this, right? What are the options that I have? And then after that, you want to say, what goals and steps can I take to accomplish these things? So how do I want to attack it? And then what goals and steps will expedite this attack?
Right. It's interesting, Brian, as you talked about, whether it's a speed bump, a pothole, stop signs, all those things, I like to call those obstacles.
Right.
And the interesting thing is, to your point, once you identify what those are, you can start to talk about, well, what are my goals? What action items can I put in place to help remove those obstacles? And sometimes you can address multiple ones at a time. Others, you want to look at potentially, one thing at a time, so you can sort of isolate that. And to your point about a proving ground, we can set up experiments to test and see if we can overcome that obstacle. Sometimes one by one, sometimes it's multiple. And it just makes it easy. It's just like driving your car, right? You can get your map out. You can get out Google Maps, whatever you're using, Waze, and you may think it's telling you. I talked about this last time. The map versus the terrain or the territory. The two different things. I don't care what Google Maps says. When I get on the road, the road doesn't look like what Google Maps told me it, right? So as we start moving down, removing those obstacles that you talked about, we're going to learn, it looks a little different than we thought, but hey, that's okay.
And think about it. If we're thinking of Google Maps as our strategic plan, right? And we're going to draw that analogy. We do not get upset with Google Maps. We do not tell Google Maps, well, it's not worth it anymore. It doesn't lose credibility in our eyes if we're driving along and somebody cuts us off, or our car breaks down, or my kid throws up in the back seat. These are all issues that happen when you're traveling. However, just because it happens while you're implementing your plan, your GPS, does not mean the GPS is broken. It just means you have to be flexible with it.
So I would just want to take a pause. Is your kid sick because of that bad chicken you fed him last time, or is it your driving?
Plead the fifth. I plead the second. I plead everything. Forget it. I'm not even, there's a reason they're not invited into this room when we're doing a podcast.
Hey, I love this. This idea around Google Maps being your strategy, your plan. And the cool thing is it starts out showing you a route, but if something happens along the way that you're not even aware of, right, it starts to say, hey, I would advise you to take a different road, right, because traffic's slowing down. And it's the same sort of thing. We put this map together and we say, hey, this is where we're going. And once we get a ways in, all of a sudden we've got some things coming up and saying, oh, you may want to make a little bit of a transition, still like where you want to go, but based on some headwinds we're coming into, you may want to make a little bit of a pivot here to do something different, still going after that same destination.
Right. And ironically, this episode is sponsored by Google Maps, the preferred GPS of the Maverick and the Method Man. They told us check is in the mail.
We can only hope.
Okay. Part 2, optimization. So once we have our strategy in place, once we have our options listed out, once we have our plan of attack and the steps that we're going to execute it, and then the kind of like those KPIs along the way that we can measure if we're making the right progress, we're going to talk about optimization. Because once we have the strategy, we don't want to try to optimize it and perfect it before we implement it. That is one of the biggest problems small businesses have. It's paralysis by analysis, and the problem being, I got to make sure that this strategy is absolutely optimized. The point is, get the strategy, start implementing it, and then look to optimize it. One question to ask simply, what steps need to be taken now that I'm already taking steps to maximize the ROI on this strategy? That's it. So
it's that simple.
Yes. What needs to be done for me to maximize return on investment on this? Whatever the investment may be. It may not be a monetary investment. It could just be a time investment. It could be a emotional investment. Put that down there. Okay, what do I have to do to maximize this in the strategy?
Right. So Brian, this execution, they always, what's the old saying that execution eats strategy for lunch, right? If you take a step back and go, there could be dozens and dozens of obstacles from where I'm at today to where I want to get to. We can't go after all of them. What are some things that you use to try to help prioritize those things that you want to work on? Because you want to get the most leverage you can, right, as you move forward. So how do you help clients decipher, figure out what are those vital few things that we're going to go after?
Well, one of the things that you have to do more than anything. It's just breaking down the fear of saying, okay, what is not going right now. All right, let's just be honest. Let's step back. We got this in place. We're doing better than we ever have because now we actually have a strategy. So what is not going well with it? What is going great? And how do we, so what is not going well? What is going great? And how do we minimize what's not going well or eliminate it? And how do we maximize what's going great?
I love that, because if you focus on one or the other,
right,
it can lend, especially the things that aren't going well, you can start to go down this sort of doom loop where you keep reinforcing that things aren't going well. If you're going after the things that are going well, and those are the things that are driving the results of the company, that means that you can continue to look at those things, and hopefully the things that aren't going as well, again, those are going to have to be significant enough where you want to address those. And those things working in concert is fantastic, right?
Right.
Addressing both sides.
So I have written down, I'm going to try to remember it. I have it written down on a note, on a little Post-it note that's down in the kitchen on one of my kitchen cabinets. And it says, a pound of execution weighs more than a ton of what I put down there, visualization, or I put contemplation. So a pound of execution weighs more than a ton of contemplation.
So stop thinking about it.
We spend too much time contemplating things and not enough time executing it. Why? Because we're afraid it's going to fail.
That's pretty pithy there, Brian. I'm starting to wonder, are we in the wrong place here? Should you be writing a book right now?
It would be okay. I would write a book, but it'd be a coloring book.
An adult coloring book. Well, or maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. We'll see. The last question that deals with sustainability. So you have your system, you have your strategy started to set up. Oh, I said system. I didn't mean to say that. That's not right, Mike.
I just made a check.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for reinforcing my framework. I appreciate that.
We got to have a system jar. Anytime I say the word system, it's like a swear jar, and I got to put $1 in it. So, okay. After you set up your strategy, then you're working on optimizing it. The next thing is sustainability, because like we get back to the previous points of, can it even be executed? If it can be executed, then can it be sustained? So what do we need to do to make this sustainable? A lot of times the passion is so high, the energy is so high when we're first executing a strategy, and then it drops off. We have to take that into consideration ahead of time. And the way to do that is to ask these questions ahead of time. 2 quick questions. What steps can I eliminate to simplify the process? And how do I simplify this enough so that it is automatic and functions on its own? If we can set it up so it automatically functions on its own, or it requires as little mental effort going forward as possible, we have a much, much greater chance of this succeeding sustainably. And that's what we want. Because if it's a one and done, even if it succeeds for only a month, 2 months, 6 months, and then it ends up failing, what do? We lose our faith in strategic planning.
Right. The other piece of that, and thank you for opening the system door, because I'm always going to step in. As we talked about last time, when we look at making those improvements, they are going to have an impact on the system. And let's just think simple sort of value stream. If you're looking at improving a process, there's a input to that process, right? Something that's happening upstream from there, and then there's output from your own process to the next one. One best way to think about that and sustain it is to understand what those impacts are, so that as we're looking at the optimization, that we're actually thinking about those things and potentially having to work on those in concert with the changes we're making. That sustainability is critical, because most improvements are never sustained. You put all that effort into it, and you'll find that a year later, if you don't do the work that you're talking about, Brian, a year later, you're going to come back and go, wait a minute, didn't we work on this? I think we had done something, around this particular item once before this process. And now you're back there tinkering with it again, not because you want to improve from where you landed, it's because you backslid because you didn't figure out how to sustain that improvement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what this process is so simple. It's meant to be simple. There's enough complicated things in your business. We need to break this down to just one sheet of paper, and you talked about it with the North Star analogy. And I like that. It just has to be simplified. And if we can keep it simple, then we can address each of the topics, each of the roadblocks, not in detail, but just as we perceive it from our perspective now, which is either at the beginning or as a WIP, work in progress. We're not going to examine it at the end necessarily. That's a whole different aspect. Once we have arrived, then we can, rally the troops, and then it's different. But this is meant to break down the walls of inaction and fear. And that's what you covered earlier.
And I like the other piece is the connection. So no matter what you're working on and trying to sustain, you can always go up and look at how is this supporting the strategy of the business. And sometimes, especially as you get deep in organization, your team kind of forgets why they're doing the things they're doing. Or, why is this important for us to do this? And we can show a direct connection between the things we're working on and go straight up to the strategy and say, this is one of those key obstacles we're trying to overcome, key area of improvement we need to make. And this is why we're working on it. And so it makes it very relevant to, whoever's working on this particular piece of it. So that alignment is critical. And then to your point, back to that North Star, we're always worried about, how are we creating more value for the customer, right? And how does doing that get us closer to that North Star?
Yeah. Yeah. And what this allows also is a very straightforward way of evaluating, are we having a problem with what's going on with what we're trying to implement? If so, is it a strategy problem? Or have we not optimized it properly? Or is it just everything? Yeah, strategy is great. The optimization is good, but it's too optimized and it's not sustainable. So you end up being able to divide things into one of those three areas and say, wow, that's actually, we have a strategy problem. We didn't clearly identify our end goal and actually where we were. No, we got an optimization problem. Yeah, this is we are not getting the ROI that we needed for this. Or no, that's all great, but it's just not sustainable. It's too complicated. We're too much in the mud for our employees to be able to execute this and carry this out nonstop.
Brian, this is great. If you're working with a client and you're getting good success, you're seeing these experiments you're running, right? They're mostly successful, and so your execution is going well. But you knew at some point you wanted to go back and take a look at that strategy again because it isn't exactly where you'd like it to be. How frequently do you go back to the top, to the first S, and say, hey, let's go back and take a look at this? And this is in terms of a company that's really got more of just a business plan, not so much a strategy, but a business plan. You were able to take them through the SOS because you can get improvements going. But at some point you're saying, hey, I think we should go back and take a look and maybe put a more formal strategy in place. How does that work for you?
Yeah. So I think it depends on the subject matter, because the SOS is so broad. You can apply it to just a department. You can apply it to the whole corporation. You can apply it to your marketing tasks. So it really depends on how broad it is, I would say initially. But the other thing is, if you're saying, hey, we need to revisit this and rethink this, I do not think it should be done any more often than every 90 days if we're talking about possibly re-engineering it. However, having said that, every corporate meeting, I believe, if this is a broad strategy, a corporate-wide strategy that applies to all the attendees, it needs to be brought up every meeting. Now,
I love
not in detail, we're not going to be going over and rehashing all the details on it, but it needs to be constantly in front of us.
It keeps that front and center for the team.
Yes.
Because again, it ties back to your strategy. And then I also like I love the quarterly updates. So a lot of companies try to plan their entire year out. I think that's a great idea at a high level. But to your point, if you plan a quarter at a time, which is way more manageable, end of that quarter is a good time to say, okay, let's take a step back. We made some assumptions, right? We went in with a hypothesis of things we're going to do, experiments we're going to run. How'd they turn out?
Right.
We thought we could tackle 10 things, and we know we can never tackle 10 things, but we thought we could. We tackled 8. Why didn't we tackle the other 2? We decided to put those on the side, put those on our parking lot because the other 8 were taking more time. But guess what? We were able to tackle the 8, get them done. Now we can say of the 2 that we didn't finish, do those go back on our quarterly plan for the next quarter? Or we may find, hey, we actually minimize those and said we wouldn't have to work on them. And now guess what? We don't have to work on them at all because of the work we did on the other 8. So I love this. 2 things. One is the granularization of what this SOS framework could do. So you can start at a department level, division, even up to the company level. And then 2, this frequent review of the plan and what we accomplished, right? And then do we continue on with the plan we had, or do we make a few pivots?
Yes, absolutely. I'm just writing down another takeaway you made me think of right there on the fly. But I guess the one thing that comes to mind, and we keep on going back to it, and I think it is so absolutely important that we keep on hammering this through. My analogy is your strategy Play-Doh, like my kids have and leave in the couch and then leave out to get hard? Or is it granite? Is it something that we are chiseling away and it's going to be a piece of art that has to be perfected, and we have to be so very careful as to every little bit of stone that we take off? My point is, it obviously has to be Play-Doh. It has to be something that we're constantly working and molding. Yeah, we can have a great time, combining the red Play-Doh with the blue Play-Doh and making little figures and everything, but it has to be something that we are willing to work with and mold constantly. If we think of this as a work of art, as the Mona Lisa, as a statue of David, we are going to be way too afraid to actually roll it out and remove the blanket from it.
I think one more thing with the Play-Doh, I love that. Remember, you used to take the Play-Doh and you'd smash it down on the comics, and then it would lift. And so the other side of it is, even though it's Play-Doh, don't be lifting someone else's strategy.
No, that was silly putty, Mike.
Oh,
remember?
That was silly. Oh,
that was silly putty. That was awesome.
Wait a minute.
I
think I figured out. Maybe I was doing Play-Doh too. Maybe I couldn't afford the silly putty.
Oh yeah,
so I had to do the Play-Doh. But I love that. It's malleable. But what we don't want to do is, and there's so many books written out there. It's like, well, here's how to be successful. It's like, yeah, in your time, in your business, in your industry, the context you don't even understand, and it's like, well, I'm going to replicate that, and I'm going to put it in my business. Well, the thing about, like, with the silly putty is everything's reversed when you lift it.
So
right?
True. So true.
So it's hard to understand what you wrote down. And you're trying to execute somebody else's plan. So please don't just, copy and paste someone else's plan.
No. Number one, it's not fun to copy and paste. Number 2, it is really tough to get behind somebody else's idea. So it's not fun. And number two, it's tough to really, really make it your own, obviously, when it's somebody else's. And it's tough for you to execute that. So I had 3 key takeaways from this SOS program. Number 1, it is meant to reduce the fear factor. Okay. When we think of it as Play-Doh and not as a piece of granite that we have to chisel away and make it and perfect it before we release it to the public, that reduces the fear factor of, oh, wait, is this going to work? Is it not? Number 2, like you said at the beginning, treat it as an experiment. We've said this over and over again. When we do that, it reduces our stress. It allows people to have more fun. When people are more fun and you get your team to have more fun with this and they're not pressured, instead the pressure is on the system, so to speak, then they get engaged. And that was a third part. It increases engagement and excitement. And that's what we want. I think I read it was 6 months ago or so that almost 70% of the workforce in the US is disengaged to one extent or another.
That's
now,
a crime.
That is and we'll cover this probably in another episode, but I believe that is the cancer for small businesses is disengagement of employees. That is costing, the Small Business Administration said that's costing tens of billions of dollars in small businesses every year. Yeah, that's insane. That's a whole nother thing, but we really have to keep our team engaged.
Yeah. And the scary part is the actively disengaged, which is they're literally fighting against your business and your North Star. So that's a great lead into our next episode, Brian. So I'm going to start to talk about, a transformation framework, and that really starts to touch on how do you embed the way different ways of thinking, different ways of doing work that literally will transform your business and will get, higher engagement than you've ever seen. And what I love about your framework is you can come in right away, Brian, as a Maverick, and start making improvements. Then I will come in after you started to lay down the substrate. You got the gravel all laid out nice, right? I'm going to come in and put that super highway on top of that thing. So
I love it. Yeah, absolutely. And I forget, help me out with the laws of physics, but in a object in motion tends to stay in motion. An object at rest tends to stay at rest. Help me out. What law is that?
The one, I don't know. It's a law of
it
physics.
Is a law of one of those things like gravity. Anyways, the point being, obviously, if we can just get moving, it is incredible what happens. I've seen it with businesses over and over again. They get so excited once the process gets into place and they actually give the A-team quote, man, I love it when a plan comes together, and then they just keep on going and going. So let me cover this real quick, and then let's go back to give us a teaser again for the transformational framework, because that was really good. So number 1, strategic question. What is my end goal and where am I today? List options for attack and decide on your plan of attack. Number 2, for optimization, what steps need to be taken to maximize my ROI in this strategy? How can I get the best bang for my buck? Number 3, sustainability. What steps can I eliminate to simplify this process? Or what steps can I focus on more to maximize the process? And how do I simplify this process so that it is basically automatic and functions on its own? How do we break it right down to the lowest common denominator? So Mike, tell us a little bit about what we got coming up.
Yeah. So what's fun is we're building. So, Brian and I, we've known each other for, what do we say now, 2 years.
Feels like 20.
I saw you said that with a smile, so thank you.
I had a full head of hair when we met, Mike.
So we're literally building on each other's ideas. And so we're kind of, teeing up each of these episodes. And the idea is Brian and I are learning from each other while we're working with our clients and implementing these things. So the great thing about, a business transformation is it plays well into Brian's SOS framework. But starts to take a step back, and I'm going to bring in the systems thinking again, but it really starts to change how you look at your business, how a business actually operates. Like I said, you've got this dichotomy. A business is a unique thing, and yet businesses have very specific systems within them, right? So you and I can come in and help, because we know no matter what type of business it is, there's some very basic principles at play within that business. We want to start to give visibility to those things, talk about a little different way of thinking about how that business works, how to interact with your teams, how to lead those teams, and to your point, drive that engagement, because that's critical. Today, the cost of replacing somebody, right? One, you've already lost, by the time someone's leaving, you've lost them, right? And so you've lost productivity, they're on their way out the door. Now I have to find a replacement, bring them in, train them, and then cross my fingers that they'll stay. If we can increase engagement, then we can talk about how are we retaining them, and then how do we promote those people within the team. And you're going to see success. The higher the engagement, the more successful the business is. There's no doubt about it. So we're going to continue to build as we have through the first 4 episodes, and just keep building on top of these frameworks we're talking about. But now we're talking about a little bit longer term play, right? In how you now go from, I've got this problem, I've got single digit earnings, I've got fires all over the place. We're bringing Brian's SOS framework in to help, reduce the flames, put out some of the fires, have a strategy in place, look at ways to sustain and optimize. And then now we're going to start to look at a little longer term strategy in terms of making this sustainment last for forever, well, not forever, but for a much longer time.
Right. And I want to take a step back and just talk to you small business owners, and to let you know the whole reason we're even bringing this up and we're talking about this is because we've been there. We know it can be frustrating. We know it can be lonely, and we want to tell you, hey, there's a way. There's help. Why? Because we don't want to just make your life better. You touch millions of people, whether you realize it or not. You touch literally millions of people, and we want you to have the impact on your world that you originally wanted to have when you started your business. So that's what this all comes back to. So I look forward to this, Mike. This is going to be great.
I love that, Brian. And not only the impact of the people you serve, but we've talked about this before, your family within the business, right? Your team members and their families. So again, the more fun you have at work, and we're putting fun back into work, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's critical. We're gonna have fun at work and know that we're serving millions of people, and we're the backbone of this country, small businesses. So we're here to be the chiropractors for that backbone.
Yeah, I like to think of it as a little therapy session, and we can
therapy,
all feel a little more
adjustment.
therapeutic afterwards, without a doubt. Yeah.